In a quiet Dallas apartment, two innocent lives were stolen in an unspeakable act. A mother, adored on social media, kept a dark secret behind the perfect image. What was supposed to be a moment of freedom ended in the death of her own children. This is the chilling story of Alyssa Monroe, a woman who chose fame over family, and how it cost her everything.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
August 18, 2023, 6:41 a.m. The call came in from Alyssa Monroe, her voice devoid of emotion. "My girls aren't breathing." The words were flat, robotic, almost rehearsed. A mother's panic, or what should have been panic, was conspicuously absent. Dispatch sent paramedics immediately, but in a place like Dallas, 4 minutes can feel like a lifetime. By the time help arrived, the stillness inside the pastel-painted apartment was already suffocating. The scene they encountered would be branded in their minds forever. Not just tragic. No, this was something more. The twins, Mia and Mila, were 2 years old. Their bodies lay side by side on the floor, hands still clasped, a tragic image of innocence lost. There were no signs of forced entry. No indication that anyone had broken in. The door was locked, just as it should have been. But there was something else, something that shouldn't have been there, a faint odor of children's cough syrup in the air. It lingered, mixing with the stillness, a scent that would soon define the nightmare that had unfolded in this small apartment. The reality of what had happened seemed almost too much to process. Alyssa Monroe wasn't just a mother. She was an image, a carefully curated persona. On Instagram, she was the definition of perfection, flawless makeup, designer outfits, drinks in hand as she posed at chic rooftop lounges. She was the single mom grind personified, a woman who juggled motherhood and her growing influencer career with ease. Her followers marveled at her strength, admired her independence. But what they didn't see, what no one could see, was the chaos hidden behind every picture-perfect post. It was a life built on filters, but behind them, nothing but cracks, cracks she tried to hide, cracks that would eventually break her. Social media analyst, Emily Collins, explains, Alyssa created an illusion of perfection, a life everyone wanted to live. But that's the danger of these platforms. What we see, the glossy lifestyle, isn't always the truth. Behind every filtered image, there's a reality most people don't have the courage to show. For Alyssa, that reality was crumbling. Her social media presence was intoxicating, her followers, captivated by her grace and confidence, had no idea how close she was to falling apart. It was as if every post was a facade, an attempt to hold on to something that, deep down, she knew was slipping away. But as her online persona soared, the real Alyssa, the woman behind the screen, began to drown. Alyssa was more than just a hairstylist. She had dreams of something bigger, something brighter. She wasn't content with just cutting hair, she wanted to be someone. She wanted to be noticed. And she succeeded. She became a Dallas influencer, gracing the feeds of thousands with her curated pictures of independence and strength. But behind the filters, behind the perfectly posed selfies, Alyssa's world was collapsing. Her business wasn't booming. Her relationships were strained. And her mental health was teetering on the edge of despair. She had built her life around the idea of success, but the reality was far different. And it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. By spring 2023, the carefully crafted world Alyssa had built began to fracture. To her friends, the change was obvious. The once vibrant woman who had been the life of the party was now a shadow of herself. She stopped showing up at gatherings, leaving early, her energy drained, her smile forced. She was no longer the Alyssa everyone knew, the confident, independent influencer with a life everyone envied. Instead, she had become consumed by a relentless, almost desperate quest for something that she couldn't quite define. Freedom, she said, but it was a freedom that would come at a steep price. As the days passed, Alyssa's social media presence began to change as well. Her posts, once filled with glamorous pictures and happy moments, started to reflect a darker, more desperate side of her life. She no longer posted about the joy of motherhood or the excitement of new sponsorships. Instead, her feed was filled with cryptic motivational quotes about self-reliance and finding freedom. But the freedom she spoke of seemed hollow, more like a plea for escape than empowerment. To her followers, it was a cry for help disguised as inspiration, and yet, no one could hear her. Alyssa's desperation was no longer confined to her posts. She pushed away the very people who had once been there for her, the ones who tried to offer help. A voicemail message left for a close friend revealed the extent of her growing isolation. "I'm not some charity case. Stop offering help." Her voice was cold, sharp with irritation, as though the very suggestion that she might need assistance was an insult. It was clear now that Alyssa was shutting herself off from the world, even those who cared about her. Her facade, the one that had been so carefully built, was beginning to crumble. Behind the scenes, Alyssa's texts to a close friend revealed the depth of her frustration. "They hold me back," she confessed in a series of texts, referring to her daughters. "I just need a break. I need to breathe." There was no sense of remorse, no hint of maternal instinct. Instead, there was an overwhelming sense of suffocation, a mother who felt burdened by the very children she had brought into the world. The digital forensics team would later uncover dozens of texts like these, each one more revealing than the last. The message was clear: Alyssa saw her daughters as obstacles, as burdens preventing her from living the life she craved. And yet, in all her frustration, she never once seemed to recognize the depth of the damage she was causing, not only to herself but to the lives of her innocent children. In this pursuit of self-image, Alyssa's own emotional deprivation became more pronounced. The cracks in her facade had grown too large to ignore. The life she had worked so hard to build, the fame, the applause, was no longer enough to fill the emptiness she felt inside. But Alyssa didn't see that emptiness for what it was. Instead, she saw only the image that was slipping away, an image she was willing to destroy everything for. August 17, 2023. The evening began like so many others, Alyssa Monroe preparing to leave her apartment. At 8:37 p.m., she dressed for a night out, slipping into an outfit that highlighted the life she so desperately wanted to project: carefree, independent, and above all, free from the responsibilities that weighed her down. The twins, Mia and Mila, were left behind, their tiny voices unheard in the quiet apartment. Alyssa, the mother of these children, walked out, leaving them in silence. The sound of their cries would echo through the thin walls, a silent plea for the attention they were being denied. But Alyssa was already gone, absorbed in her own world. At 9:12 p.m., surveillance footage captured Alyssa's black SUV pulling away from the apartment complex. Her night had begun. She was headed to a downtown lounge, a place where she could shed the weight of motherhood for a few hours, a place where the self-image she had spent so much time constructing could be fully realized. At 12:44 a.m., her phone flashed a new notification, a post to her social media. "Finally outside again." A celebratory caption. A glimpse of freedom. But behind this post was a deeper, darker story, one that would unfold in the hours to come. At 3:05 a.m., Alyssa returned to the apartment. She was carrying takeout and 2 bottles of cough syrup, items that would soon play a crucial role in the events that followed. Her face was cold, expressionless. The carefree woman who had posted about her night out was now just a mother returning to her children, but there was no trace of maternal warmth in her demeanor. It was a moment that would be etched in the minds of the investigators who later reviewed the footage. No smile. No acknowledgement of the twins. Just the mechanical movements of someone returning from a night of escape. The investigation would soon reveal a truth far darker than anyone had imagined. Toxicology reports confirmed what the paramedics and detectives had already suspected. A lethal combination of antihistamine and acetaminophen had been found in the twins' systems. The dosages were chilling, far too high for children their age. The amounts, it turned out, were consistent with what would be administered to an adult to help them sleep. Not toddlers, not 2-year-olds who couldn't have possibly taken the substances by themselves. This wasn't a tragic accident. It was deliberate. The realization was almost too much to comprehend. A mother had taken her children's lives. And not in a moment of rage or panic, but in cold, calculated action. There were no signs of trauma, no violent struggle, just 2 small bodies poisoned in the quiet of the night. The truth was poisoning their world, one detail at a time. As Detective Carla Rains reviewed the findings, she couldn't shake the image of Alyssa, standing silently in the background as paramedics worked to save her daughters. A mother's hands, she thought, her fingerprints on the bottles, and the chilling truth in the autopsy. The same hands that had lovingly dressed her children, cared for them, had now taken their lives. The poison that flowed through Mia and Mila's veins had come from a place they should have been able to trust the most, their mother. There was no accident here. No moment of poor judgment. This was calculated. And it was heartbreaking. Further digging into Alyssa's digital footprint revealed something even more damning, her search history. How to make toddlers sleep longer. Can cough syrup overdose kill kids? These were just some of the questions she had typed into her phone in the days leading up to the tragedy. Alyssa wasn't looking for information on how to calm her children or soothe them through a restless night. No. She was looking for answers on how to make them sleep for good, answers she thought she could control. But in her quest for freedom, she failed to see the devastating consequence of the actions she was about to take. The scene plays out in a dimly lit room, Alyssa seated at her kitchen table, her phone screen glowing in the darkness. She scrolls through search results, her eyes scanning the pages as her mind races. How to make toddlers sleep longer. The click of her thumb as she taps on a link, her face a mixture of frustration and resolve. Then another search, can cough syrup overdose kill kids? The question seemed harmless enough, but at that moment, she was looking for a way out, looking for a solution to a problem she didn't know how to fix. Detective Rains explains, this wasn't a mother trying to calm her kids, this wasn't an accidental overdose. What we saw here was a deliberate action. Alyssa knew exactly what she was doing. She was looking for ways to make the twins sleep longer, for her to have a night out, to breathe again. She thought she could control it, that it would be simple. But the reality was far more tragic. Alyssa Monroe sat in that interrogation room for hours, her demeanor unnervingly calm. She repeated the same story over and over, I was home with the girls, I didn't leave. She told the investigators that she had been there when they stopped breathing, that she was right beside them. But the evidence didn't align with her words. Phone GPS data revealed something entirely different. Alyssa had been at a nightclub, 6 miles away, when the twins died. Her story began to unravel. The tension in the room thickened as Alyssa's calm facade began to crack. The pressure of the investigation was too much. Alyssa finally admitted it. I gave them something to help them sleep, she said. Her voice remained flat, devoid of emotion, but the truth was out. She had thought they would just sleep longer than usual, that they would wake up when she returned. But she was wrong. She never anticipated the tragic outcome of her actions. Alyssa's frustration became evident as the interrogation wore on. You don't get what it's like, she snapped. I needed one night to breathe. There was no remorse, no sense of guilt in her words. Just anger, anger that her desire for freedom had led her down this path, and frustration that she couldn't undo the damage she had caused. Psychologists later analyzed Alyssa's mindset, revealing how desperation had consumed her. Alyssa's actions were driven by narcissistic deprivation, an expert explained. She needed validation, she needed freedom, and in her mind, her children were standing in the way. This wasn't about malice, it was about self-interest and a failure to see the consequences of her choices. The courtroom was packed with onlookers, reporters, and grieving family members. At the center of it all stood Alyssa Monroe, a mother on trial for the deaths of her twin daughters, Mia and Mila. The prosecution wasted no time in painting a chilling portrait of Alyssa. She was a woman consumed by her desire for validation, addicted to the applause and attention she received online. They argued that her actions were deliberate, her need for one night to breathe had cost her children their lives. Prosecutor Ellen Hart explained, Alyssa didn't snap. This wasn't a moment of weakness. She measured doses, waited, and then left. She returned hours later, with no sense of guilt. There was no remorse, only irritation when confronted. This was calculated. This was intentional. The defense, however, tried to shift the narrative. They argued that Alyssa had been overwhelmed, stressed by financial difficulties and suffering from postpartum depression. They pleaded for understanding, trying to paint her as a woman pushed too far by the pressures of motherhood and life. When the verdict was finally read, the courtroom fell silent. Alyssa was found guilty on 2 counts of capital murder. The sentence was life without parole. There were no tears, no apologies, only the cold reality of a life forever altered. In the end, 2 white caskets sat side by side, stark against the green grass of the cemetery. Mia and Mila, once full of life, were now gone, their laughter and innocence replaced by silence. The graves were far too small for the dreams they could have had. Dreams of playing, laughing, growing up together, learning to braid each other's hair. Instead, their lives were stolen by the very person who should have protected them, their mother. And now, Alyssa Monroe, the woman who had once chased the limelight, faced a future of quiet emptiness. A life filled with the consequences of her own choices. As the funeral unfolded, the grief was palpable. Family members and friends spoke of the twins with tears in their eyes, remembering what should have been. They were so full of life, one of the relatives said, her voice shaking. Mia loved to dance, and Mila never went to bed without her panda bear. The possibilities were endless. What would they have been like as adults? What could they have achieved? Instead, their futures were reduced to memories that would haunt those who loved them. The twins' grandmother, standing beside the caskets, whispered through her tears, they were supposed to braid each other's hair. The simplicity of that statement hit harder than anything. It wasn't just a loss of life, it was a loss of innocence, of the future that would never come. Forensic psychologist Dr. Sarah Walker reflected on Alyssa's actions. In today's world, where social media rewards perfection and external validation, many mothers, especially influencers, feel a sense of isolation and pressure. For Alyssa, this desperation for freedom and approval may have clouded her judgment. The constant chase for an image of happiness and success led her to neglect the very people she was meant to care for. The toll of modern-day expectations had become too much for Alyssa to bear, and it cost her children their lives. The tragic deaths of Mia and Mila reverberated far beyond the walls of Alyssa Monroe's apartment. This was not just a local tragedy, it was a cultural wake-up call that resonated across the nation. Alyssa's case became a stark reflection of the dangers of living for social media validation, where the pursuit of likes and followers overshadowed the most basic human responsibilities. In a world where perfection is often staged, Alyssa's desperation for freedom led her to forsake everything, including her children. The outcome was both heartbreaking and preventable, yet it highlighted a deeper societal issue. Public outrage swept across social media and news outlets. Many blamed the constant pressure of social media for encouraging a false image of reality. People are more concerned about how they look on Instagram than how they're living in real life, one commenter said. Others expressed disbelief at the choices Alyssa had made, with some arguing that she had fallen victim to the very culture she helped create. The outrage wasn't just about the crime, it was about the pressures of modern life that contributed to such a tragedy. Experts weighed in on the mental and emotional toll of single motherhood in the digital age. The pressure to constantly perform, to appear perfect online, is exhausting, said Dr. Emily Harper, a mental health specialist. Single mothers, especially those in the public eye, often feel trapped, like they must balance their real lives with an idealized version they can never fully attain. This exhaustion, combined with isolation, can be overwhelming. As the nation grappled with the loss, the question lingered, what could have been done differently? Could Alyssa have found a way to balance the pressures of motherhood with her desire for freedom, without resorting to such an extreme and tragic solution? For many, the answer was clear: she could have asked for help. She could have taken a step back and found healthier ways to cope with her emotions and responsibilities. But in her pursuit of self-validation, Alyssa missed the simple truth that freedom doesn't come at the cost of others' lives. Alyssa Monroe's pursuit of freedom destroyed more than just her own life, it stole the futures of two innocent children. Mia and Mila, full of potential, full of love, were gone in an instant, their lives snuffed out by a mother who had chosen herself over them. In the end, the perfect image she had so carefully built online, an image of strength, independence, and glamour, was nothing more than a hollow illusion. Behind the filters, behind the photo shoots and influencer deals, was a mother in turmoil, a woman who couldn't reconcile her online persona with the reality of her life. Her quest for validation had led her to a place where nothing, not even the love of her children, was enough to stop her. The apartment, once filled with the laughter and joy of her daughters, now stood empty. The quiet was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos of the past months. The walls, which had once witnessed Alyssa's online success, now held only the echoes of a tragic loss. There was no perfection here, only the rawness of grief. The only truth left behind was the sorrow of a family torn apart by choices made in the pursuit of a false reality. This case serves as a painful reminder of the emotional and societal consequences of living for external approval. The pressure to maintain a flawless image online can distort our sense of self, leading to destructive decisions. For Alyssa, that pressure became too much to bear. The search for freedom, the desire to escape, ended up costing her everything. It's a cautionary tale of how a life lived for likes can cost far more than anyone realizes. This tragedy reminds us of the dangers of losing ourselves in a quest for approval. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health or feeling overwhelmed, please reach out. There is help, and no one needs to face their battles alone. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime investigations that uncover the hidden truths behind the stories you think you know. In every tragedy, there's a lesson. But the cost of learning this one was far too high.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.